to introduce Andy from Nuyarn.
All
What's
right,
up,
I'm
man?
back. Yeah, that was great to hear from Icebreaker. So I think, there's not often that a technology comes along that checks so many different boxes, from performance to sustainability across the board. And we're going to hear about one of those today. And so I'm really excited to introduce Andy Nguyen. He's the CEO of TMC Limited, the company that created this revolutionary spinning process called Nuyarn. So Andy, with that, turn it over to you.
Good morning, Matt. Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for the introduction and for the invite. I think I'll just start at the beginning, Matt, and just talk you through the fundamental differences of Nuyarn versus other technologies. A few years ago, we were continually approached by our brand partners to develop merino product that was lighter, that would perform better in field, and essentially capture those three critical performance attributes that everyone's looking for: lighter, drier, faster. Some of the limitations that you have with merino wool is the spinning technique of creating a yarn that essentially has restrictions around the kind of weight that you're able to achieve. So ourselves and our technical people got onto farm and understood really on farm exactly what the wonderful benefits were of merino wool. We came to realize and appreciate that in nature, merino wool behaves and performs incredibly well. It absorbs moisture from vapor. So one tier before synthetics can absorb perspiration. It dries extremely quickly, keeps the animal in nature warm in the cold conditions, and essentially cool in summer conditions. One of the challenges that we'd faced as an industry, and if I can just show this to you, Matt, this is just a hank of wool. One of the limitations that we face as an industry is that in creating a yarn, essentially, we twist the yarn, and that keeps the fibers intact. Now that's called a ring spun yarn. So essentially what you do is you take the fibers, you twist them into a rope-like structure, and in doing so, you limit or reduce the capacity of the wool to behave as it does in nature. So it's more difficult for the fiber to absorb moisture or perspiration. Once it's absorbed perspiration and moisture, it's difficult to dry. And essentially this rope-like structure is a singles yarn largely. And because of the natural fiber lengths of wool, one of the limitations is that in the rope-like structure, you will get too few fibers in the cross section, and there will be a weak point essentially, and you get a hole. So the difference between a conventional yarn process or ring spun yarn or coarse spun yarn and Nuyarn is that Nuyarn drafts fibers around a filament with no twist. And so we're able to allow the yarn structure, the fabric or the apparel, to behave similar to how it behaves in nature. So on the left, the ring spun image you'll see, that's a conventional ring spun yarn, which is twisted into a rope-like structure. The center one is a coarse spun yarn, which essentially has a rope-like yarn, a ring spun yarn twisted around a filament yarn. And on the right, you see a Nuyarn structure, which has a filament of yarn with fibers drafted around it. And so those fibers have got no twist and no directional twist. And at the same time, is a two-ply yarn, not a single yarn. So one of the real issues that our industry has faced for some time has been that your merino garment absorbs a lot of moisture, it retains it, it gets wet and clammy, etc., doesn't dry up particularly quickly. And at the same time, because the industry largely uses a singles yarn, you get issues with holes. So the fundamental difference in the spinning technique of Nuyarn versus conventional spinning is that we don't twist the yarn in a rope-like structure, And because we don't twist it into a rope-like structure, we've got enormous amounts of volume. So that's the image of Nuyarn. It's a 2-ply yarn, like I say, without any directional twist. We draft fibers around a filament of yarn, and in doing so, we've got some significant performance benefits. So we're able, once again, to allow the merino wool to perform as close to it does in nature. Now, this image is 10 meters of ring spun yarn on the left-hand side and 10 meters of Nuyarn on the right-hand side. Now, you'll see from the image the sheer volume increase in Nuyarn. Now, it's volume that you're wanting to try and create, because it's the volume that allows the moisture to be absorbed from vapor stage, which, as I said, is one tier before the vapor turns into droplets of perspiration, thus keeping the surface of the skin dry. But it's also the volume and the aeration in the volume that allows the fiber to dry very, very quickly. So it's moving away from a rope-like structure into a drafted structure of creating a yarn, and that has some significant benefits. Now because the Nuyarn fabric socks, or translating into apparel, can absorb quicker from vapor stage, the fabric will absorb vapor faster, will dry faster because of the aeration, and dries up to 5 times quicker than conventional wool. So if we go on back to the next one, the big performance attribute of Nuyarn is the sheer volume of elasticity. Now, if you look at the elasticity of this garment, there's no lycra in this product. Now, what we've come to understand is that in order to create elasticity, so your sporting attributes like cycle, run, golf, ski, etc., you have to create elasticity for comfort and performance. So the fabric has to hug the contours of the body. And in creating elasticity, or the need for elasticity, you have to knit a spandex yarn with your fabric, and that creates weight. One of the downfalls of spandex is that it absorbs up to 2.5 times its original weight, and has no wickable features. It will retain that weight. And so if you're an ultra marathon runner and you've bought 115 gram t-shirt with 12% lycra, in a short space of time, the lycra has absorbed up to 2.5 times its original weight and will retain the weight. The other downside with that technology, spandex or elastane, is that it degrades with ultraviolet or granular washing powder. So your spandex garments start to grow and lose their shape, as well as having the issue of absorbing large amounts of perspiration and retaining it. So Nuyarn is a technology where the fibers aren't twisted into a rope-like structure, so those fibers are free to move. And once again, Matt, if you look at this product over here, the level of elasticity and regain is absolutely phenomenal. So that creates a number of benefits for the consumer. First of all, hugs the contours of the body with no need for spandex or elastane. Secondly, has a weight advantage. So we're creating a mechanical stretch with no degradation over lifetime. So that elasticity will be there for the life of the garment. It doesn't degrade. And the benefit, obviously, is you don't have that large level of moisture absorption, which is a fairly big challenge in performance.
So Andy, we're pushing right up on 5 minutes here, and I want to make sure we hit a couple key points. One I think that's really interesting is the sustainability side of it, and also just so for a broader understanding, is Nuyarn making? Are you making your own products, and how did you get to this point?
So Matt, we build our own machines ground up. So this isn't a conversion to a conventional spinning technique. This is a machine that we build ground up ourselves. We're onto a generation 2 machine, and by the end of the year, we'll be in a generation 3 machine. We spin at speeds of 140 to 250 meters a minute. So that's 140 to 250 meters a minute. Conventional spinning would be 14 on a good day. So we spin remarkably quicker than conventional spinning. So our footprint is significantly less because we need a much smaller facility or factory to have the same outputs as a much larger factory because of our spin speeds. We also consume 25% less energy and around 30% less raw materials. Now, we are also consuming filament yarns, EcoCare from Nillet, which is 100% recycled nylon, or 100% biodegradable nylon from people like Fulgar. So we are moving very rapidly into a space where we'll be 100% sustainable, 100% renewable, etc. If we go through some more of the slides then, Matt, we can also talk about the longevity of Nuyarn, because Nuyarn, if we have a look at the burst strength of Nuyarn, 50% stronger, which means that the longevity of the product is improved. So if we go on to the next slide. So in terms of the tensile strength of the product, this is a test that we undertook to create seams with Nuyarn and a conventional ring spun fabric. We put it in a testing facility, ag research, and we essentially tested the seams for burst strength. At 3 kilograms of torque, the ring spun product had torn the seams. At 8 kilograms of torque, after having 3 attempts at trying to break the Nuyarn seams, essentially the metal clips holding the fabric were starting to tear. So this gives you a real good snapshot of the tensile strength and the advantage around the actual strength of the 2-ply yarn, factored in with the unique DNA of the yarn technology.
So it performs better, dries faster, it lasts a lot longer, and understanding that there's a lot of new yarns used for base layers, mid layers, many other things. But how's the comfort? We got about 2 minutes left, Andy.
So Matt, if we go on to the next slide.
Okay.
So this is an overall snapshot of the performance attributes. So the performance of Nuyarn and the comfort of the product are enhanced for the simple reason that when you twist a yarn like this, essentially what you do is you get a whole lot of the little short fibers that stand out because you're creating a rope-like structure. And when you knit a product, because you're knitting it through synthetic eyes, etc., you create static. And by creating static, those little fibers stand up even more. And it's those little fibers that actually create pilling and hairiness, and also create an itchy, scratchy sensation to the surface of the skin. Now, because Nuyarn, we don't twist a rope-like structure, we draft, those little fibers don't stand up. So the comfort of Nuyarn in the fine micron count would be 0.5 to 1 micron benefit, which essentially means in layman's term that it's a more comfortable product.
Fantastic. And who are some of the brand partners that you're working with, Andy?
So, I mean, currently we've got a fairly large basket of customers. Kuyu were one of the first hunting brand in California to launch our product. Artelect is a really new and exciting brand that you'll be hearing from later today. Autovox, Saliwa, Odlo, Black Diamond, Moscow Moto, Kathmandu, Backcountry.com, Yeti, etc. So we've got a real interesting basket of customers, and we have got a number of sizable launches coming up in the latter part of this year.
Well, that's great, Andy. Thank you so much, everybody. There's a bunch of information about Nuyarn in the press kit. Please follow up with me, Matt at echoscom.com, for any questions or to test some things out. And Andy, thank you so much for taking the time to join us here today. It was really, really great to hear from you and to see you.
Matt, thanks very much for having me, and enjoy the rest of your day.
All right, you too. Thank you so much.